There we go.
Great. Welcome to the Wednesday, August 27th, 2025 special meeting of the Thurston County Planning Commission. Thurston County Planning Commission is a resident advisory committee to the Board of County Commissioners on land use planning matters such as the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance amendments. Planning Commission actions are in the form of recommendations to the county commissioners, the final decision makers. All Planning Commission meetings are open to the public. Community members are welcome to observe all Planning Commission briefings and work sessions. Public comment is welcome during the public communications section of each meeting and during any scheduled public hearings. Do we have anybody online? Doesn't look like it. I think we got a full house. Okay, we'll start with introductions to my left.
I'm Eric Casino. I live in the Lacey UGA and I serve the county at large.
Barry Halverson, Yelm, Washington, District 2.
Kevin Pessinger, District 5.
Yvonne Miller, District 1.
Daniel Baumbarger, District 1.
Colin Bartlett, live in Tumwater, District 5.
Sandy Kaiser, I live and serve District 3.
Bill Fishburne, I live and serve in District 4.
And Joel Hanson, I serve District 3. I don't see anyone on that. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have an agenda in front of us. Does anyone have any changes they'd like to make to that agenda? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have an agenda. Thank you very much. Next is public communication. Would anyone in the audience like to address the Planning Commission tonight?
No, thank you.
No, okay. Would anyone online like to address the Planning Commission tonight? If so, please indicate that by using the raise hand function on the Zoom call. Not seeing any raised hands, we will move on to item number 3 on our agenda. Work session number 39 on the Thurston 2045 Comprehensive Plan update.
Good evening, Commissioners. Maya Teeple, Senior Planner with Thurston County Community Planning, joined by Anna Rodriguez tonight to cover Thurston 2045. So we can just pick up where we left off at our last meeting. We got through about half of the development regulations. We covered several chapters at the last meeting: climate, cultural resources, environment. And so we have a couple of development regulation items to revisit. I know the Planning Commission wanted to revisit parking and then Grand Mound residential densities. And then we have the utilities and housing chapter to recap. I guess if we want to start with the parking piece, we can pick up from there. The conversation was, we have a consideration in the code for 0 to 1.5 spaces per unit. We have to select something within that range. The existing number is 2, and that is for multifamily units of 5 or more, developments for multifamily units of 5 or more within the Grand Mound area. So we had a couple of discussion pieces last meeting, and we deferred that discussion to this meeting.
Commissioner Baumgartner.
Yeah, so last time we stalled out half and half on 0 when we made a motion. However, we have more people here today. So I would love to test 0 again if we could. But I'm sorry, it's your job.
Well,
Sorry.
are you making a motion?
He has commentary. I'd rather let him go before I
Commissioner Pessinger.
motion.
I'm curious because I missed the meeting. Can you tell me a brief summary of what the discussion, what the debate was, just 1 or 2 lines?
So one of the things that we discussed originally when this topic came up is that current mandates for the number of parking spaces that a new housing development has to produce is too high. I think it's right now it's 2 or 2.5. And we had come to agreement that it should be lower in the 0 to 1.5 range, but for actually finalizing it, we need to come to a number. And we were split down the middle with people who believe that number should be 1.5 and people who thought it should be 0. The argument for 0 was essentially developers will build what makes sense And that way they're not forced to build more parking spaces than is strictly necessary for a thing, which could lower housing costs and get more density. The argument against was it's going to overflow the streets. It's not enough parking and that we should have a minimum threshold. That was the two sides of it.
Thank
Did
you.
I summarize that fairly decently?
Excellent.
I see both
Excellent.
points.
Can you tell me about the limit? This is just for Grand Mound, I thought she said.
Yeah, so 2044 applies to all of Thurston County, and this is specifically in our rural zoning, so it would be multifamily 5 or more units within rural unincorporated. So areas not covered by Title 21, 22, and 23, which are Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater. But UGAs like Yelm, potentially Rainier, if they have those kinds of developments, would be subject to this.
Thank you.
There's very few areas in the county that would support that kind of density of 5 units.
Yeah. Right now, our other UGAs outside of Grand Mound, Rainier, Tenino, and Yelm don't have multifamily allowed in it. It's more like our 1 to 5 still in those UGAs. So
It's not specifically for Grand Mound, but it would effectively only impact the Grand Mound area.
I'd like, if it's okay, a follow-up to Commissioner Fishburne since he lives there. Rainier,
What is the follow-up?
what do you think?
Can't think of any place outside of the city limits where something like that is buildable.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bartlett has his hand up.
Oh, Commissioner Bartlett.
Yeah, I guess, I know that a lot of the conversation ended up coming around essentially in these areas where we're talking about essentially building a city, or putting in the framework for a city, in the future. It was sort of how can we set that up? Like, how are we setting that up in terms of, its car-centric nature, or or like, are we setting it up for public transit? Are we counting on that public transit existing where it may or may not? Those were a lot of sort of the conversations we were having around that. And along with the trade-off between setting it up for a future kind of model versus what that does to the people in the meantime, which there was a lot of concern about the pain that would cause.
Yeah, if I could just piggyback on that, I in particular was worried about the push me, pull you kind of quality of the development where we might be making these wonderful utopian ideas about no parking places, but you imagine you're an older person coming home from your job at the casino in the middle of the night, and you've got a security challenge getting to your door because you're parking a ways away from your place and there's no public transit to serve you at that point. And so I'm reluctant to be super doctrinaire on this at this point, because I can imagine that there's a lot of people in that situation who'd be living in those apartments because there's not many other options for them. And I've been in that situation myself, working shifts, swing shifts and stuff, and having to navigate some scary neighborhoods. And so I just don't know if we're really ready to go to zero yet.
Commissioner Culberson.
The other part of that conversation was, we were more focused on the Grand Mound area because that's the area that was buildable and could possibly use this type of residential area. And the fact that there is little to no transportation hub in Grand Mound, and there's not one going to be there for the foreseeable future that we know of. Not that it wouldn't be good to have it, it's just too expensive for the folks to get down there and whether they'd use it or not. It's a little bit more diverse community. It's a larger area. There's room for parking spaces down there when the developers build this. And almost everybody that lives in Grand Mound, unless they work at the casino, is going to have to go somewhere else to work, which means they're going to be commuting, which means they're going to be driving, which means they're going to need a vehicle. And if you have a 2-family household, normally in that community with the income levels being the way they are, both family members are gonna be working, which means 2 vehicles per family. We had looked at 1.5 vehicle. To reduce it from the 2, which is required now, I believe it's 2 vehicles for that type of development now. We had looked at 0 to 1.5. I think 1.5 is a reasonable reduction from 2. And that was the discussion that we had last week. Because we're looking at a specific community probably for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years at least. That community is going to be growing and expanding. And there's no indication from anybody that the transportation hub is going to expand to include bus transportation in the Grand Mound area. And if there is, it's more likely to go south than north.
Mr. Miller.
I feel like, if we do the 0 parking, it would push for transportation and also, building houses, I highly doubt that they're not gonna build a parking lot or a driveway for people to park in. I feel like this is not going to be, there's absolutely 0 parking whatsoever. But we do need to push for transportation out there. And if we're building a bunch of parking lots, a bunch of parking spaces, it's not going to push for that. And it's going to get more people to drive. And our job is to worry about climate change. And if we're adding more cars on the road, then it's a detriment to our climate. So.
Commissioner Pastor.
Chair, I was part of initially, like years ago, with former Commissioner Wheatley, questioning the status of Grand Mound as a UGA and whether it was a UGA intended only to protect the water district, the water quality, or whether it was a UGA intended for actual growth. And I'm pretty sure the old documentation was saying it was for protecting the water, but nevertheless, staff has checked into it. They come back and say very clearly it's for growth. And a couple county commissioners have made public comments in the newspaper that it's for growth. So I think it's fair to say that's what's going to happen. That's the intention from the majority of what's operating and making these decisions. But I think it's news to a lot of the people that live there. I think that a lot of the public hearings have centered around the public in Grand Mound has very clearly stated, we do not want to be the suburban overflow of Rochester. We want to stay small, stay rural, and they want affordable housing. And my number one concern is that we protect the existing affordable housing, which is why the density and the diversity is there right now. The high percentage of Latinos especially. And I think if we can do anything to protect current affordable housing and encourage new housing to be affordable, that's what I care about. And this parking is, we're asking a question of, is it going to make housing more affordable? Are there anything else we can do to make housing more affordable? That's what I really care about. So I could go either way on the parking, but I really care about housing affordability. And I question, could we say anything like what we hear in other jurisdictions where they say, okay, if you're going to, you get up to a 12-year tax abatement, for example, if you're going to make 10% of your units affordable for a minimum of that amount of years. Things like that. Do we have any ability to do that in this jurisdiction?
I don't know.
I like that idea, but
I know that the county and the cities, it's been an ongoing conversation of people saying we want to make this housing affordable. Granted, we're all using affordable in the market way, but realistically, it's like below 30%, and that's just not as feasible. And the jurisdictions don't have a way to track those housing units. That's the biggest thing, is it would require, our public health team were passed through for grant funding, but as far as tracking who lives in the unit, whose income is what, have they surpassed that income threshold, there's not a system set up here or like any of the cities, and I've talked with folks about that, so it's something that would have to be a long-term goal of developing it. But as far as capacity goes, and also those places typically being managed by property management companies, more so than the jurisdictions, it also throws a wrench into things.
It doesn't match, I'm sorry, just to react to that, it does not match what I've heard from the city of Olympia. I've talked to people in the city of Olympia that say there's very specifically a program in place for that. They've got a number of large units that are designed for that, that took advantage of that. They have a sub-council of their city council that every year is supposed to look through, receive a report. The property owners are the ones that are mandated to report the information. And the city subcommittee of the city council reviews it and then extends it, say, yeah, okay, for this year, we're doing it again. These ones qualified. So I do think it exists and I think we ought to consider it.
Those kind of
We-
programs do exist in some of the jurisdictions, for tax credits for affordable housing. The quantity, so that it's usually for like denser development.
Yep.
The expense that it would take for the county to run a program like that for the number of units that we would have probably wouldn't pencil.
And we do have that as an implementation metric in the plan in the appendix to look into setting up a program like that. As Anna mentioned, it would largely be a public health driven program with their department. But I believe Tumwater has something set up. My communications with them 2 or 3 years ago has been that it's really hard to track. It's kind of self-reported and not necessarily the most accurate, but that's probably an outdated statement. And there are ways to do it. It's just that we're not there today. So once we have something set up like that, we have already started talking about where we could potentially move the dial with impact fees. And that is also within our implementation plan to look into that with an impact fee study and have affordable housing incentives for that.
But could we at least put like language into this saying that, like, hey, we care about this, we want this to happen, we recognize it may not be feasible yet, but we encourage it to happen as it becomes feasible.
I think the current actions would cover some of that from what I think Maya is saying, and I'll trust Maya on this one. And I don't know how you'd link it to because this specific question is like what parking requirements, like what parking thresholds. So, I mean, you could do something like waive the parking requirements for affordable housing. Although it does kind of put you in that same dilemma where it might be some of the people who need the parking the most would be least able to get it.
Yeah, and that's a little harder because usually the renting comes after the fact and you're saying, you know, you have to do this for 10 years in order to reduce your parking requirements. It's kind of hard because they're developing it before they're actually, you know, showing face that they're renting at an affordable rate. But we do have language in the code already for things like density bonuses within Grand Mound specifically if they have EV parking spaces. So I do think that there might be opportunities in the future, and we've built that language into the plan so that we have those actions set up to do the affordable tracking and
Thank you. Commissioner Bummer.
Yeah, so I just wanted to briefly recap how the vote dropped last time. Myself, Commissioner Bartlett, Commissioner Fishburne, Commissioner Miller, and Commissioner Casino were in the 0 camp. Commissioner Halverson, Commissioner Nelson, Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner Kaiser were in the 1.5 camp. And the conversation, at least for my part, was focused on affordability. More density means a cheaper house in a complex. I get that it is pain, but if you're choosing a person housed or a person with a convenient parking spot, I will choose the person housed every time. Just how it works.
Casino.
I was in the same camp as Commissioner. And to kind of go on some of what Commissioner Miller had saying, understanding that that these parking requirements and adding more cars to the streets are not good. And this is a useful tool of putting pressure on bringing in some mass transit. But the focus that I was really going after is that I think that the market really is the best mechanism for deciding here. We got to remember that more housing is better than no housing. Not all housing has to serve every renter. So just because somebody has 3 cars and 8 people, doesn't mean that they have to have the newest apartment or multifamily rental unit that is available. The people that build these kind of things, they do some market research before they build them, and they'll figure out whether or not it's worth putting in the parking there for them or not. And when we think about just the square footage of it before, I was talking about, I would gladly give up a parking spot for another bedroom. I think that's a worthwhile trade, but it's actually worse than that or better than that in a way, because nobody's going to build multi-level parking in Grand Mound, but they probably are gonna build 12 packs down there, which are 3 floors of 4 units. And so that means for every parking spot you give up, you have the potential of having 3 more bedrooms. And when you look at it like that, the whole idea of trading cars for people, I'm just not into it at all. I'll let the market decide whether or not they want to do it, and whether or not it's feasible. And so I'm going to continue to vote for no parking requirements.
Mr. Bissinger.
I appreciate Commissioner Casino's comments. I think similarly, and I think the cities is where this really belongs. But I think if we were to do this, it sends a signal to the cities that this ought to be considered. And I support that, so I'll probably be in support of that as well.
So if we're done discussing, then I'd love to test zero with the group.
Can I ask a quick question first? Is there a mechanism whereby there could be one standard, but for some frontage improvements or some other things to the road that would maybe lessen the parking wars, that the number of parking spaces could be reduced to 0? Is there a mechanism whereby we could put
that? I didn't.
well, so say we say that the standard is one parking space per unit, unless a developer does XYZ in terms of frontage improvements that maybe makes for more parking on the street. Is there anything we can do in that regard?
I would just push back on that. I don't see value to it.
Okay.
I don't really care what's out on the street when I'm trying to add more bedrooms. If you want to, I don't see where there'd be value in that. But I could be in the minority too.
I would also say that might get more at, that might actually in some ways encourage some of the street parking issues that we were talking about in terms of congestion in the road. But I don't have a strong feeling about it.
Commissioner Moore.
I'd say also this applies to new development, right? No one's going to suddenly find themselves with less parking in a parking lot for a building that's already built. Folks will go in open-minded about the available amount of parking spots. The listing will say does not include parking or has only 1 parking spot, and people will consider that when they choose whether to rent that place or not. If you're in a situation where you are in that 50% of AGI, right? And that is a housing you can afford, and right now you have 2 cars, but you could afford to live there and you're gonna have to work out a little bit of logistics with the wife and a carpool or something. You make the choice that makes sense for you for housing. And that's my mindset on that.
As someone who's made that decision before.
I think we're ready for you to make a motion.
Well, I'd like to motion that we support the minimum of 0 for parking in the UGAs.
I'd second that motion.
You'd probably call that.
Any further discussion? Let's do a roll call on this one.
Commissioner Casino,
Aye.
Commissioner Halverson,
Nay.
Commissioner Pessinger,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Chair Hansen,
Nay.
Vice Chair Baumgartner.
Aye.
Sorry. Commissioner Bartlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Kaiser. Nay. Commissioner Fishburne.
The motion passes.
Sorry, I'm excited. We spent so much time on that last meeting.
I'm happy to be done with it.
Good work. All right, moving on, Maya. Thank you very much.
Great job. So our next topic is Grand Mound density. So we have a consideration in the draft to bump densities within Grand Mound in response to the housing deficit, deficit mostly for low income housing. And right now the options on the table are to bump densities within the residential zones. And that's kind of the option that was baked into the initial draft. We have residential 3 to 6 proposed to go to residential 5 to 12, and then residential 4 to 16 proposed to go to residential 8 to 24. And then we have a second option on the table for consideration, which does not adjust the residential zones within Grand Mound, but would bump the housing allowance within the commercial zones in Grand Mound, which is mostly arterial commercial. That's located along the old Highway 99 corridor and the US 12 corridor. It's generally along the existing water and sewer service lines as well. So.
Is there a reason we can't do both? Both bump densities within commercial areas and then also increased densities in the residential.
Yeah, so if we do the residential bump, then the commercial will bump by default. So that will allow a little bit of additional space within the commercial areas.
Cool.
I think the first does both.
Okay, that's good.
I'll add that I'm pro the first option.
Okay. Any discussion?
Encourage affordability.
Okay. Is there a suggested motion or some
Move to
language?
accept the first option, increasing residential densities.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
I
Opposed? Okay, next part.
Could you just tell me what the number was in the vote? How many yeas and how many nays?
unanimous.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Okay, thank you. And so just to recap, that is bumping in residential zones and then the commercial gets bumped by default as part of that.
Yep.
Great. So the next item on my list, I know last meeting we got a comment from Betsy Norton on utilities, and then our housing chapter we have not visited yet. So I want to look to the Planning Commission and see what order you would like to tackle that on. Would you like to start on housing?
I mean,
I'm confused because we're way out of order. This summary page says land use first, then housing, then development, and there's 3 different development and only one of them is Grand Mound. So far we've covered 2 Grand Mound issues. It seems out of order.
Yes, you're on the PowerPoint. Is that correct, Commissioner Pestinger?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I will probably move through that at the very end. Right now I'm on our memo from June 4th, and that basically works through the chapters in sequential order. Development regulations was the last, and now we're jumping back to housing. In terms of the motions, we've really addressed almost everything on this slide at this point, but I'll ask for formal motions and votes after we get through the housing wordsmithing.
I'm curious on the housing. What does that mean? Mandatory reductions to residential density?
are you suggesting we move on to housing? I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Do we want to move to housing?
Where are we?
We're deciding between working on utilities or working on house.
Yes.
Whatever you like.
And I see that someone joined
Yes, I
us
think
late and after we had done public communication, so I'm just gonna open up public communication one more time in case you are interested in that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just, I briefly, sorry, I'm late.
No, that's okay.
My name's Betsy Norton. I live in Olympia. And I just brought some photos I took out at the Quarry Pond in Pennsylvania. If people are wondering about what a plain gravel mine can look like, I just wanted to share this.
Terrific, thank you.
Awesome.
Okay. Housing utilities, do we need to thumb wrestle for this or?
Don't we have a preference? I would prefer to do utilities first, if for no other reason difference to our audience.
So be it. We'll do utilities first, Maya. Oh, and you are muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. We have generally covered the utilities chapter at the last meeting, though. We did get a comment from Betsy that the Planning Commission asked to reconsider at this meeting. And we went back and pulled that language. So the request was to consider how heavy intensive uses like data centers might use energy and water, and to include policy in the plan to protect residents from adverse impacts on power and water resource availability. So we do have some general policies across the plan. Some of that lives in the health chapter about protecting water quality and availability, and also in the environment chapter. But we could certainly add a new policy in the utilities chapter. And I have drafted a couple if the Planning Commission is interested, or we can open it for discussion.
Ian,
Commissioner Bartlett.
I'd be interested in hearing what you've drafted.
That's what
Yeah. So some options for new policies. One new policy could be ensure that growth of technology-driven industries like data centers does not compromise the long-term availability and affordability of essential public resources, including water and power. And then a second policy could be safeguard residents from adverse impacts on power and water availability and costs associated with large-scale business development. We could also consider an implementation item under the utilities section of that appendix that says evaluate mechanisms to track total energy and water demand on high intensity users, such as data centers, and use that information to inform future planning and policy decisions. Water, we could probably set up some sort of tracking in the future for something like energy. Puget Sound Energy tracks that, and it is incredibly hard to get that kind of data right now. I'm already working on that with some of the battery energy storage system stuff, and they safeguard it. So we would certainly have to work on partnerships in the future, but those are all options for the Planning Commission to consider adding in the plan.
One of my considerations here, I'm looking at Georgia right now, who's dealing with a lot of AI data centers that have been built in the area. Their streams are running dry. And their residents, who are largely poor folks in these areas, are left with no water because these data centers get priority on it. And I think that's profoundly messed up. So I don't know if we could potentially address water priority. But the other thought is a lot of these businesses go in and they have perpetual agreements to use this water. Seeing a lot of it might likely be pumped groundwater, like that can cause a lot of geological concerns. And so if we were to permit a data center, I would love to see something that did not give them perpetual license to use our water to, our expense. Just my thought process on that.
And I have had inquiries come in on this in the past, people looking to rezone their property to something where they can do this. And the water rights question is usually kind of a hard stop for them because they just can't get the water rights they would need for that type of a facility. So.
Yeah, you have to go through a pretty extensive ecology.
Under Coca-Cola.
I was just gonna add into this that I think that the economics of bringing a data center to this area are, I just don't think they'd ever pencil out. So I don't think that it's a huge concern that they're gonna show up. But I also have zero qualms about making it difficult if they can. Same, so those suggestions that you had for policies on, I like those and I would probably support those, but if I don't want to get too draconian here and just write in the code right now, no data centers ever. But I don't want anybody the way we do water rights in America is ridiculous. And I don't want somebody showing up here and taking advantage of that and all of a sudden the water dries up. So I guess I got no sympathy for the data centers.
It's 5 cups of water for one inquiry on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's obscene.
Yeah.
Wouldn't limit it to data centers either. I mean, cryptocurrency is insane usage of electricity and that exponentially increasing. And most of these data centers look for two things: cheap water and cheap power.
Mhm.
So we happen to have a lot of cheap power thanks to a lot of dams.
Commissioner Brook.
I'm hearing a lot of support for the actions that you've already suggested. I was interested if we could get a temperature check on those, and then we could talk about if we wanted to do anything beyond that, just for moving.
Okay. Maya, do you want to go through them one by one? We'll just,
Yeah, the first policy is ensure that growth of technology-driven industries like data centers does not compromise the long-term availability and affordability of essential public resources, including water and power.
we need to limit it to technology-driven industries, or should it just be,
I think it's a good start.
okay?
We could say technology and emergent industries,
Hmm.
right? That way we're covering something new that pops up between now and then.
There will be new.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
technology and emergent, I think, is probably the best way to put that.
Modeling is not new and emergent, and I'm a little unhappy about what Swire Coca-Cola has been doing here in Thurston County to take over massive amounts of water rights in Tumwater. And with very little SEPA analysis and other environmental.
It's very different to tap into a municipal system versus getting a water right to pump groundwater. So it's much more likely to happen tapping into a municipal system, which the county does not have.
Outside of
Yeah,
Grand
a
Mound is
handful of little
very
tiny
limited.
ones.
I guess what I'm saying is I encourage us to not be limited to anything that would be a massive use of our natural resources.
If I could respond. I would suggest that while that is a great point, that clarity on this particular proposal is worth leaving it specific, and if we want to pursue another thing for the comprehensive plan to address that, that's probably the best way to handle it.
Maya, the second, good language.
Yeah, the second policy is safeguard residents from adverse impacts on power and water availability and costs associated with large-scale business development.
I think that would address
You
your.
know, we can get this too.
I have a little quibble with that in that it's only about humans,
Hmm.
and I would like to see it cover the ecosystem.
Good point.
I would agree with that.
Any oppositions to including some ecosystem language as well? All right, you got consensus on that as well with that tweak.
Great. And then the last one would be an implementation action item under the utilities section that says evaluate mechanisms to track the total energy and water demand of high intensity users such as data centers. Use that information to inform planning and policy decisions.
Straightforward. I'm good.
Too.
Great.
You have consensus 3 times.
Is there any discussion about additional language that we think might need to be in that section?
I actually think to Commissioner Pessinger's point, the second item addresses it, so I think we're good.
Excellent.
Thank you, Maya.
Great. So the last item on,
Oh, apologies, Commissioner.
You know, I keep thinking affordability right now, and so like, I'm not happy with power bills going up like crazy, water bills going up like crazy. Like, it's insane for people on fixed income. I don't understand how they keep getting approval to raise rates 10-15% a year. It doesn't even match up with inflation. So my question is related to utilities. What can we do to maintain affordability or constrain increases?
Anna, do you have any insight?
I don't know if we can really tell the private sector what to
They're
do.
not the private sector. They have to come to us for approvals for.
If we had a
Not county.
PUD for power, we
Yeah.
could, but we don't.
So I think we are making a step in the right direction with including the renewables and some of the energy storage facilities as part of this code package, because having more options for energy sources will hopefully strengthen our power grid and also reduce the cost. I say reduce the costs, you know, that's a hope. Who knows if it'll actually do that? But that's the pitch that the energy industry is giving, is that's why we need those things. So, you know, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on the clean energy codes that we're moving forward, and I would say that's a step in the right direction. I think that's where we have good agency.
Our rural community members are on wells, so they're not necessarily paying water bills in the same way that you would in a city. Grand Mound, of course, is the exception here, and there's some other water systems, but for the most part, it's
Commissioner Bartlett.
I guess, yeah, I was interested if you had any particular ideas, Commissioner Passenger, about ways that we could potentially, within our limits on the comp plan, address this, because it is something that we should do.
Well, I know, for example, and some of this is true for cities like City of Lacey and their water, done through lot and whatnot, but they have programs for low income folks and to get discounted rates. But for example, they've made it incredibly difficult. It's a Byzantine process and
I've never.
you have to supply 18 different forms and it might last a year or two, but if you ever have to reconfirm it, it's a nightmarish exercise. And that's for some of our power and for our water. The real scam is in our internet and connectivity and cable and whatnot. And they say they have affordable programs. They make you submit a ton of information. And then they tell you, no, you don't even remotely qualify. And there's like disqualifiers, like you could only make $10,000 a year, but if you have more than $500 in a bank account, that disqualifies you. You're a smart person if you make less than 10,000 a year, but you have a little bit of savings. That's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're rich. It doesn't mean you can afford full price, but yet that's disqualifier in their program. So just simply improving programs that allow for low income people to qualify for affordability would be a huge step, I think.
It's worth noting that even if you do qualify, you have to recertify every so often. So you go through a lot of hoops to get your $15 a month, barely considered broadband package. And then in 2 years, you're stuck going through the whole song and dance again. But that's a federal regulation that they're complying with there. It's not a local one. I'm not sure how much we could do it to impact that.
Is there a nexus at all with the county's franchise agreements with some of these outfits and the comp plan?
Maybe this
yeah.
chapter.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
yeah, the utilities chapter under state law is really intended to just be sort of this holding
Yeah.
place where you're identifying all of these different utility providers. But
We don't know if we could put a goal in there that while negotiating franchise agreements with Comcast, that they make this process a little easier for our.
I second that, Commissioner.
Could we frame it something like pursue opportunities to exceed the FCC's affordable connectivity program goals for utilities or something like that? So we're acknowledging there's a federal rule, but we're hoping to do better type thing?
Might not be actionable, but
I mean, I'm not sure how actionable anything we put in there is.
yeah.
But at least if someone goes to the comp plan and wonders why we're not doing it, like they see the reference that we're trying to do better than a federal regulation, and who knows how bound we are by that.
I am interested if we are able to do what Commissioner Casino was suggesting there, around language around when we're negotiating with these companies, in the same way that we have language around negotiating with developers.
Can of worms.
Oh,
You're welcome.
well, are the folks that do that negotiations bound by the comprehensive plan? That really is mostly a CPED driven thing. And so and I recognize this is completely antithetical to everything I've been saying about housing and public health, but they also have commerce requirements. And so our plans look at each other, but there's no requirements for electeds to adhere to anything we have in the comp plan. So it's kind of, we could, but it's y'all's names on this document and how much would you want something in there that's just fluff that doesn't actually come to
Well, we
fruition.
got a lot of other fluff with our name on it. I'll put my name on that.
If I should correct myself, I looked into it. The Affordable Connectivity Program has been cut by the feds. 30 million people have lost access to that as of June. So
Gives us a pretty low bar to cross.
so there is no federal requirement at this point, so anything we do is better. We're basically putting ourselves at the mercy of multinational corporations to offer a good deal. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Okay, Commissioner Bartlett.
I mean, yeah, I guess if we were gonna have anything about that, it would be a policy about enhancing partnerships with, you know, XYZ organization, to work towards, or to increase CPED's involvement with that goal. That's something that I've seen suggested in other comp plan action items, so it's within our scope.
Not to sound like a filthy capitalist, because I'm definitely not, but this might be one of those situations where more competition is helpful. Part of the reason why utilities are so expensive is they're an oligopoly, right? Companies agree not to compete against each other. We have seen penetration of our market by fiber operators like Ziply. They're not available everywhere, but where they go in, Comcast, who is the largest internet provider in the area, drops its prices because it now has competition. So perhaps we could put something in the utility chapter stating that we encourage the rollout of competition of some sort in that, or the rollout of fiber, which is genuinely cheaper too.
Well, it's PUD provided.
Yeah.
Sure.
That gets at something that I was thinking about with power and internet more generally, which is, yeah, as Maya was suggesting, like a lot of this just comes down to making more options available, making more generation available. So we could do what Commissioner Bumbarger is suggesting, but also just expand that to like increase, like support, how do you put that? Like alternative methods of, you know, alternative utility sources, including the fiber optics, including you know, like we were discussing with solar or public Wi-Fi, things like that. Alternatives to diversify the market in these contexts.
You could throw the word resilience in there too, if you wanted to.
Yeah.
People love that.
By the way, just to counter the comment, competition doesn't always drive costs down. I currently live in a place that has Ziply fiber and I pay $20 a month for 1 gig service. I still have my old Comcast service and I pay $90 a month for 300 megabytes. So one third the service for about 5 times the cost.
That sounds like you should ditch the cable. $20 for a gig is great.
Saying it's not lowering costs.
Well,
I love it.
Okay.
So we don't really have a formal proposal language on there. Could we just put a thing for the sake of resilience and competition, support the rollout of fiber optic internet in the county?
I don't think anyone in this commission is opposed to us encouraging more affordability options for utilities. And I'm asking staff, because if we're all in agreement on that, please come up with some language that reflects that. That's all I'm asking.
Support that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
If I need to make a motion to that, I will, but are we good with that, or do we need a motion?
I think we've got enough
We
thumbs
can
up.
work with that, right, Maya?
Even if
We
it's
can-
fluff, I
we can-
support it.
Yeah, and this is specific to all utilities, not exclusively internet connection, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
So if we were to include something about exploring public utilities, additional public utilities and additional competition.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah.
I was trying to do that.
Okay.
My melting words.
I'm looking
Great.
at the chapter right now and I think I see how it could fit. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to housing. So we did briefly go over the June 4th memo. There are at this point, there's no remaining decision points for housing. We've talked about ADUs, clusters, Grand Mound. But I know the Planning Commission wanted to chat a little bit more in depth about policies across the plan. And we did get some feedback from a few commissioners. You should have that. So I think what's probably the easiest at this point is for us to just work through those changes and then we can have discussion wherever we need to.
Feedback. Yeah, I've got it open here if you guys want me to read over, so ask one of the people who worked on these.
That would be great if you want to lead.
So one of the things that we looked at was the term eligible organizations. Eligible organizations are defined in RCW 5920.030 section 4. It's a little more expansive than the terminology that we use, and includes tenant ownerships, cooperatives, some interesting things. The feedback that we got for modifying. So we suggested community land trusts, resident nonprofit cooperatives, local governments, local housing authorities, nonprofit community or neighborhood-based organizations, federally recognized Indian tribes in the state of Washington, qualified tenant organizations, and regional or statewide nonprofit housing assistance organizations whose mission aligns with the long-term preservation of the manufactured/mobile home community. And we wanted to add low-income/affordable housing and tenant ownership to that. Staff stated that the term is not explicitly used in the comprehensive plan. The plan uses, quote, eligible nonprofits in some policy in the housing element. They said they defer to the comments below. In a case like this, less specificity now offers more flexibility later. The Office of Housing and Homelessness Prevention is the department who facilitates most of this work, so they would defer to them. We also brought up another definition under RCW 5920.030, which is a qualified tenant organization, which is not mentioned in the current comprehensive plan, but it means a formal organization of tenants within a manufactured/mobile home community. We wanted to add that as well as accessory dwelling units or multifamily rental housing, with the only requirement for membership consisting of being a tenant. And they said, as we saw in the LRA code update, state law supersedes local jurisdictions. We could add the definitions with additions, but it will lead to confusion and a lack of transparency when we are adhering to RCW and not our comp plan glossary. So essentially, they're saying that the definitions that we're using are slightly different than the state definitions, and it could cause confusion if we used those different definitions in the comp plan. I don't know where we're at on that.
Yeah, so I may have introduced some confusion in that by citing the RCWs. I was using that just as this is an area where we've seen these definitions used before with it's within the scope. And it's relevant to the reason that we brought up those particular definitions is that we use them in some of the other stuff that we're looking at later on. And when I was looking into both of these, what I found is that eligible organization, the one that specifies mobile home and manufacturing communities, that's because it was within a larger set of RCWs that was specifying that. But that definition exists in the broader sense outside of that within other RCWs. So if we're talking about eligible organizations, or we're talking about qualified tenant organizations, the ability to use that term and have a definition that fits within that scope does seem to exist within RCWs at least, and could exist within county definitions as well. Again, those are only relevant if we end up using any of the other language that then brings them to mind. So I just wanted to bring that up.
So if I understand, what you're proposing is not a different definition than WAC, but simply that we reference those two definitions as stated in WAC in the comprehensive plan for context?
I was just referencing them for the sake of the staff. So we don't need to have the reference to them within the RCW at all, is what I'm suggesting.
Gotcha. So with that one out of the way, so there's no real action we need to take on this, is what you're saying.
Not
Okay, the other one is we wanted to rewrite goal 2. As written, goal 2 is not well written. It's confusing. I'm pulling it up now. Give me just a second here. Oh, page not found. Lovely. Thank you, story map. I have the rewritten goal. We wanted to rewrite, I wanted to pull up the original,
I have it if you'd like it.
reread goal 2.
Yes, promote safe and quality housing diversity that meets the changing population needs and are in close proximity to jobs, transportation, and daily activities.
Yeah, it's just the modifiers in a weird place. Safe and quality diversity. What is safe diversity? I don't know. So we decided we rewrote it as promote a diverse range of safe, high quality housing options that adapt to changing population needs and are well located near jobs, transportation, and key services.
Second.
All right. Go ahead.
With one modification, can we add an Oxford comma after transportation?
Of course, I would never.
May have put it in there originally.
Yeah.
He edited it and sent it in, so.
This is copy and paste from
Here
what
it
we were
comes,
saying.
Oxford.
I'm with you. I hate that.
Okay, let's see some thumbs on the Oxford comma.
Especially, I'm doing it even if you all.
Those opposed?
Just say eats, shoots, and leaves.
And the next one was H1C.2, which is not could you,
Yes.
okay, we wanted to change the word consider, which was very to something a little more oomph-y with pursue.
Oh, yes, it's the list of consider affordable housing incentives such as those suggested in RCW 3678.540, including but not limited to density bonus within urban growth areas, height and bulk bonuses, fee waivers or exemptions, parking requirement reductions, expedited permitting conditioned on provision of low to moderate income housing, mixed use projects, lower utility hookup fees and rates, tax exemptions in target areas, and housing levies.
Basically, we shouldn't just be thinking about it, we should be doing it. So pursue is at least a little more powerful. Any objections to that?
No.
Okay.
Actual language.
That's a good start.
Another one was amending amending 2.c.1 to read, ensure adequate zoning for special needs housing such as emergency and temporary housing for unhoused families and individuals, as well as transitional and permanent supportive housing for formerly unhoused families and individuals. Staff basically pointed out that our use of special needs housing was a little flawed there, or a little narrow. They suggested the alternative, which reads, ensure adequate zoning for emergency and temporary housing for unhoused families and individuals, for transitional and permanent supportive housing for formerly unhoused families and individuals, and for special needs housing that provides safe and accessible options for persons with special needs. I think the staff alternative reads well. Just wonder if anyone has any objections to that. Hearing none. We're on board with that. The next one was, we wanted to amend H22.4.b. Just rolls off the tongue. So what we wrote is build upon and fully implement the 2019 to 2024 Thurston County Homeless Crisis Response Plan and its associated goals and action items, engage with its partner organizations on continued revisions to transition into a longer-term plan. Before I read staff comments, the reason we brought this up is it references this plan like we have a current one waiting to go and ready because it expired in 2024. They're still in the process of writing 2025 and the plan doesn't have, the current timeline doesn't have it theoretically getting enacted until December of 2025. So it's more of a 4-year plan than a 5-year plan. I didn't know the progress of that second iteration of the plan. So I was like, well, if we don't have an active plan, we can't really work on the one we have. So with that in mind, they offered a suggestion that said that we could add a new implementation plan item that says, update the local homeless housing plan every 5 years, engage with the Lived Experience Housing Steering Committee on the plan update, as well as core stakeholders representing homeless services, behavioral health, and opioid response / prevention. So I think their suggestion brings to, I didn't know that there was already a project.
Also add that edit I made months ago, just in our document, so that what you have flagged as it being out of date, I had already tweaked it to just vaguely reference the plan, but the suggestion that Maya and I crafted, mostly Maya, I can just easily trade that out.
I think the implementation plan item is good because it gives some more weight to like, this is a serious thing and we should update it regularly. Sweet. Okay. So we had a fairly ambitious one that would designate, quote, manufactured home preservation zones in rural unincorporated areas and UGAs to protect existing mobile home communities and support their conversion into resident-owned, permanently affordable models. County staff suggests an implementation plan action item. They said to remove the UGA because that would trigger joint plans and be complicated. But the IP plans would be to research and raise for consideration a new docket item that supports mobile home preservation and considers one, a zoning overlay for manufactured home preservation zones that are intended to designate and protect existing manufactured mobile home communities and rural unincorporated areas. Prevent displacement and encourage long-term affordability. Again, no Oxford comma there. And two, program or policy that supports conversion of mobile home communities into resident-owned or nonprofit models to ensure permanent affordability. I like staff suggestion. I think that makes sense as an IP action plan. Our real goal here when we were writing the suggestion was that private ownership of a lot of these mobile homes is rapidly sending them to unaffordable areas and giving folks support for saying, well, we all live here, we could buy and be our own bosses, so to speak, and keep it affordable. It should be there. So I support staff's suggestion there. I'm not sure how folks feel on it.
Can double second it?
Any opposition to that one? All right. Okay, the next one was really ambitious. And basically we wanted to add rural density bonuses if an eligible organization, the reference to the WAC that Colin had brought up, it would basically set up a new special permitting process that allowed for housing developments that were targeting under 80% of AMI, that had adequate water, waste management, and transportation infrastructure, maintains the rural character of the land and does not urbanize the rural land, and individual units do not exceed 500 square feet and are clustered to preserve open space, habitat, and working lands. Essentially tiny home villages or like very small units in a sort of multifamily building would give them and they would have to commit to a minimum of 50-year public benefit agreement to maintain affordability, would let them put more density in 1 to 5. And staff basically said that we can't implement that for a number of reasons, largely because we can't, going denser than 1 to 5 on a wide scale basis runs into legal concerns. Rural densities of 1 to 5 have been upheld by the GMA and density bonuses have been challenged in the past. Current proposed density bonuses are limited to HCP service areas with existing retired development rights, which results in shifting of development rights rather than adding more and can only occur on a limited basis. And two, the county doesn't have a program set up to track affordability of units. So just because they committed, we have no way of guaranteeing that they would do it. And third, water, waste, transportation, and other utilities are primarily located in UGAs. We will not get large on-site septics, aka loss, or community water systems for low densities, even when clustered, unless over a certain threshold. Their suggestion was don't add at this time, set up programs and structure for affordable housing tracking, which is already an implementation plan, and then consider it at a later time, potentially 5 to 10 years out. It was ambitious. I still think
It could be a choked on. Could be future changes in state law. So that is correct. We are really limited by current growth management hearings board cases to do like clustered tiny home villages, like in a forest. I can totally see the vision.
yeah, the goal was like they're barely taking up any space. Like clearly we could make it work under the water and electric footprint.
I think it's gonna take legislative changes, but they are being proposed year after year. Most of the housing changes have been really focused on urban areas, of course, but there are some rural ones that come through. And we could look at things like HCP is one area where we know we're retiring the development rights and we can track it. You can also potentially tie it to some kind of innovative transfer development.
What was that last part?
Some innovative use of transfer development rights.
Oh, okay.
That the way those programs have traditionally been set up is to work from urban to rural, that you can come up with, like, we're testing rural to rural models.
It actually makes probably more sense using rural to rural models because you don't have an artificial cap in the cities that drives the ability to create a density bonus that you buy from the rural area. So you have to artificially.
And we want to limit rural growth, right? So it's like, hey, require people to buy TDRs. So I think there's some mechanisms.
On that note, is there anything that we can or should be doing in order to set ourselves up for that kind of success in the future, or set ourselves up for
I
those?
think the policies
goals?
are in there, I mean, because they are supporting current development code updates around our conservation subdivisions. It's more the intensity of them.
Mhm. And then a follow-up question would be, is if we can't do something like this regarding overall density, is this something that we could potentially get at with ADU bonuses?
So I think
ADUs or
we've got the opening to work on issues like this, and I think we have the impetus when
Okay.
we have when we add the recommendations planning commission made about the 5% rural growth. That gives us the, like, we need to be looking for ways to basically change the development trajectory in the county.
Who's that?
Oh, there's a few more, sorry.
Can you make a comment?
Oh, Commissioner Pistinger.
I mean, I probably slightly differ from some on this, so obviously I care about affordable housing, but, not to be confused, I believe affordable housing belongs everywhere. However, I don't believe density belongs everywhere. And that's the difference I would make, is that I think density belongs where we have the right services across the board, from transportation to other services, access, et cetera. I don't think density makes sense spread out all over the rural area.
Commissioner Fishburne.
Yeah, a couple of the comments in here just sparked another, I don't know what we want to call it. I guess it'd be similar to like some kind of a home zone, but you know, I have a friend who recently rented into a development that is entirely, it's all owned by the same corporation. They're all single family dwelling units. But it's, nobody in those units can ever own, it's all permanent. Something I saw here, permanently non-resident owned, I guess is how I would classify it. And so I just wonder if there's an opportunity in some of these discussions to consider limiting or preferably disallowing developments like that. I love the idea. I mean, there's a community out in Tumwater, folks have probably, or not, yeah, Tumwater. Folks have probably been past it. It's right across the street, right across Little Rock Road from Black Hills High School, I think. I don't know, 150 homes, maybe 200. None of them can be owned by residents. None of them can be owned by the people that live there. There's no rent to own communities. It's 100% rentals.
There's one of those in Yelm too, right across from the fire station on Mill Road.
I don't know others, but I don't want to see that in Rainier. I don't want to see it in Tumwater where it is. But it seems like there's opportunity within this section to address that issue somehow.
Open to ideas for discouraging single-family dwellings exclusively for the purpose of renting and removing the bottom rung of the property ladder. I just. Not sure.
I'm curious, I'm just wondering, I know Maya's done a lot of work like around on the military compatibility and with JBLM, and that there is a very unique market for rentals here because of JBLM that may not exist in other places, and I don't know if that's.
It's not unique
Especially
to
the
us.
wait list on base, at least when we moved here, it was a couple years, depending on your rank, it can be 8 to 12 months to even live on base. And the problem is soldiers aren't, especially enlisted, aren't paid enough, but they have to live somewhere, and those are in rentals. Like big apartment buildings, finding a home from someone who owns a home here, but they PCS elsewhere. So there is a really distinct need for rental housing in this area because there are tons of soldiers who come with their families, they need somewhere to be, they might PCS elsewhere, their family might stay here. So I've never encountered in all the places I've lived rent to own. Mostly developers are making their corporate entities making these places specifically for renting, and there are problems with that, but I think outright rejecting them would potentially limit any housing development at all. And there is a pretty, JBLM is the second biggest base in the country, I think. And given its proximity to Seattle and everything, there's always people coming here. It's one of the hardest places to be located, which is why I'm grateful I'm here. But yeah, it's a very specific housing market, especially because of how hard it is to get housing on base.
One of the things that we suggest later on does get kind of to part of that at least, which was prioritize right of first refusal for tenants in manufactured mobile home communities, accessory dwelling units, and multifamily residential or multifamily rental housing when properties are sold. Coordinate with eligible organizations to facilitate acquisition. If we added something on there about encouraging rent to own, that would be that essentially.
I could possibly do it, yeah.
Yeah, it was, the comment on that was that it's most appropriate for our Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention's local homelessness housing plan. I would push back on that slightly in that, one, it can live in two places. And that two, this isn't specific to houselessness, as you're pointing out, like. So I would still, despite that comment, suggest that as a priority or an action item, especially given what you just said.
If I could add, in particular, we wrote in negotiation with developers, we should prioritize the right of first refusal. And I agree with Commissioner Bartlett that putting it in a housing plan that is already basically a year late shows the kind of weight that housing in this plan carries versus the comprehensive plan.
They're late because Commerce was late to get their guidance out. I wanna make sure public health isn't getting smeared. Commerce was
I
really
would
late
just-
in getting their requirements out to all of the jurisdictions that need to do their housing plan.
So just respect for Office of Housing Homeless Prevention for what they've been
Yeah.
doing.
Tom and his team are killing it.
For sure, I'm just saying it gives it weight and makes it so it's not something that can fall off in 5 years if it's in the comprehensive plan. And it's, again, it's prioritizing, right? It doesn't force them to give a right of first refusal, but it could potentially give folks, hey, you live in an apartment complex in Grand Mound and they built it, they rented it out, and now they're trying to sell it already, just trying to turn a quick buck. The renters there, if they work with an eligible organization and they want to turn that into something where they own their buildings, we should support that. That's just my thought process.
I wonder if there isn't a way to incentivize sales of some of these rent-to-rent homes, something where developers could be allowed a certain amount of time where it's only available to renters, and then after, I don't know, 10 years or some number that we agree on, then we give right of first refusal to whatever the latest renter is.
My only worry in that scenario is that a developer or a property manager will intentionally let the property run down to a certain point with a bunch of deferred maintenance and then try and pass the buck on to the owners.
Potentially, I don't know what the HOA situation is in those areas and what the maintenance agreements are with the owners, or excuse me, renters.
I mean, they would need to form a new condo association for a multi-unit and.
These are not multi-unit.
Oh, you're talking single families. I'm thinking not just the single family, I'm
We
thinking.
should, I mean, we would have to think about those units as well.
That sounds
The
like.
one thing I wish,
About that market, if that market exists.
the one thing that I would offer is this is a pretty detailed, implementation level conversation for the comp plan. I'd say could do it.
Fair
It
enough.
does sound like an implementation item, possible, like implementation plan item though.
But I think my point is usually something like a program like this would take a lot of stakeholder input. It would take a long time. You'd need lots and lots and lots and lots of
You
input.
suggesting we give an action item to staff?
Yeah.
Could we add a goal, so instead of being like in negotiations with the developers, prioritize, be like, explore the possibility of implementing a right of first refusal for tenants in manufactured home communities, accessory dwelling units, multifamily rentals, and rent-to-rent single-family homes when properties are sold, and coordinate with eligible organizations to facilitate acquisition. So we're not forcing it, but we're saying this is something we want to explore.
I think that's the right level to insert into the comp plan.
Okay.
Something you're interested in.
Does anyone have an objection to exploring that option?
I not only support it, I would encourage, state law's been considering this the last couple of years and almost passed it last year. And there's a difference. One of the issues the homeowners keep asking for is you can't just do it in 30 days or 60 days. We need 6 months to be able to gather ourselves together, get the resources and get it done. We can do it in 6 months. We can't do it in 60 days.
Yeah.
So that matters.
And I think that's why we referenced those organizations, the eligible organizations, right? Because where an individual homeowner might struggle to flip a switch, if you're looking at a mobile home community or a multifamily home where one of these nonprofit tenant organizations could help you organize, they have standardized agreements and pull money, you could turn around a lot faster in that situation.
I fully support this. I've been supporting this concept for years. I've researched local housing units that have gone for sale in bulk. Briggs Village, for example, was bought by a hedge fund in California about 8 years ago. They sold for approximately $160,000 a unit. Who wouldn't want to buy a condo essentially for $160,000 in this market? There's recently a big property sale in Lacey that had over 100 units that went for approximately $220,000 per unit. It's not as expensive as people would think, and if the renters can get access to the capital to do it, it's locked in that rent because otherwise their rent's going up.
It shouldn't be a radical concept to want Thurston County Washingtonians to own Thurston County property.
Yeah.
So we're in agreement on the explore language, so the modification to like a softened version of our proposal, and including the modification also to include the rent-to-rent single families in that mix. I see nods from Maya. Okay, just making sure. Another one was encourage development of seasonal, recreational, or vacant housing units into full-time residences, including considering higher property taxes for non-primary residences not held under conservation easements. The staff responded that this does not need to be added as there is already an excise tax within Thurston County on short-term rentals. Thurston County should investigate whether there are incentive programs to convert short-term rentals to full-time residences or disincentives that could be applied on having short-term rentals. If the latter option is chosen, it is best as IP item, as it would require coordination with cities, PHSS, and through review of limitations under state law. I guess I would push back a little bit on staff. We weren't only targeting short-term rentals here. We see private developers and capital hold on to homes that sit vacant for literally over a year because they want a certain amount. And I think that you should pay a cost for holding housing without sticking a human in it because you're propping up property values or you're hoping for an amazing deal on that type of thing. Like there should be a cost to leaving a home empty. That was my thought process when I helped with that one. I don't know if there's a middle ground there. I'm not sure if you have anything to add.
I approve of the idea of that IP item. But yeah, I would agree with your analysis on that.
I'm sure Yvonne, if you had anything else to add on that.
Honestly, Commissioner Casino.
Oh, Commissioner Casino.
My big concern about something like that is that sure sounds a whole lot more like stick, and I think a program like that should be carrot.
So that would be the incentive program side of that,
Yeah,
of the two that were mentioned?
yeah, the house sitting vacant, the only thing that hurts is the housing market, doesn't hurt anything else.
I mean, there's a bunch of people that are wanting a house, and if they're getting denied that house, then where else are they gonna go? They're gonna,
That would be the housing market that is being hurt. What I mean by it, that's the only, but it doesn't cost the community, outside of the housing market implications, it doesn't, it's not like if the house isn't being rented, they're not paying property tax. They're still paying property tax. And
Yeah.
they're not using services. So that's why I'd like to see it kept as an incentive instead of a stick.
If I could, it's not a US based thing, but Europe has seen success on reducing the underhoused population with occupancy taxes. There's a cost to leaving a home vacant. What we're seeing in some communities in the United States is private capital comes in, they buy a couple houses in a neighborhood for over asking. And people start selling, they leave those houses empty and they buy more and more of that area. So it's market manipulation that they're doing, and they're okay leaving that open because it's valuating, because they're inflating the market on the other things, and then they convert them to pure rentals. That's the kind of stuff I would love us to have some tool to disincentivize. I'm not trying to disincentivize, someone who's approaching retirement and wants to sell their home and is just very certain that it needs to go for this price. The market will handle that. It's really not the small time people that I was thinking of when I was helping write this, but I think you'd agree that private capital coming in and manipulating the market by buying a bunch of houses and leaving them vacant is not good.
No, in fact, if you found a way to keep only real humans owning land instead of.
If only,
corporations,
we have to get it so
I would be
directly.
totally on board with that, but I don't know a way to make that differentiation.
Yeah, that's not what this says, though. This says encourage redevelopment of seasonal recreational or vacant housing units into full-time residences. So
Particularly, I was focused on considering a higher property tax rate for non-primary residences. The other idea is like if you own a vacation home, right? That's nice, but if there are people living on the street, then maybe you pay a higher tax rate for your second home.
I don't think the county has any say on that kind of taxation.
I don't know that we track that right now, so I think it would be hard to implement or even have a policy. We could certainly add an IP item that says explore something and research an occupancy tax. But I don't think we have the tools set up in place to implement something like that right now.
Instrumental.
is there anybody that you would suggest we can talk to about this?
Anna, do you think public health would know anything about this? I mean, this to me sounds like a realtor's conversation. So
I don't,
It's assessor's office.
Not real.
It's real. Well, it touches a lot of departments that are just outside of CPED, which is why if we're not giving you exact language or exact like programmatic responses, is because it's not something that we would do. And so we would just have to follow up with our fellow departments. Like, I don't know what the assessor is tracking and not tracking.
And out of the 57,434 housing units in unincorporated Thurston County, about 3,000 of those are not occupied. So in table 4-4, we have figures on that. So it's right around 3,000 units, a little over 3,000
That are
units.
not occupied?
So we have a
Worth noting-
5.6% vacancy rate in unincorporated Thurston County.
It's also worth noting what the affordability of those vacant units likely is. Most of the rural county, it's in the 120% plus AMI. So those houses being available for purchase will be available at market rate. And for folks who need transitional housing aren't gonna be able to access that because they're just simply so expensive. So it's worth keeping the affordability in mind as well.
I've brought this up at several meetings in the past, and I think it is absolutely something we can do something about. I think it is within our realm of authority, not our realm of authority to decide, but to recommend. And there's numerous examples of case studies of this. I mentioned at about a meeting about 6 months ago that St. George, Utah specifically implemented double, a tax rate for resident owners and a tax rate for non-resident owners. And it was about double. And operating in St. George, Utah, I know that Hawaii has had a humongous concern about this. And there's a massive pushing out of native people in Hawaii, of people who've been Hawaiians for their entire life and are moving. There's more Hawaiians outside of Hawaii than there are in Hawaii. And there's a huge amount of house ownership in Hawaii of people that don't live there and that go there once a year.
Vacation.
And the house sits empty the rest of the time, or it's Airbnb or whatever for brief periods. So I think there's things we can do. I think it's a real issue. I don't think we have nearly the type of issue that major tourist destinations have. But we still have a legitimate issue that's not nothing. 5.6% is something of significance. What we have is.
And so a lot of the rental taxes are done on when you file your state income taxes, which right now we don't have that in Washington State. We could look into like a property tax, but again, we'd have to coordinate with the assessor's office and see if they're even tracking that information.
Exactly. Yes, that's.
Yeah, Commissioner Bumbarger and I had just for the interest of time, and it sounds like there's some interest in the things that are being suggested here. So my suggestion was accepting the implementation plan item that staff suggested in addition to
The goal of exploring an occupancy tax or similar mechanism to discourage vacancy.
Worldwide, London was the first case study in this.
Europe's ahead of us on this, but is there any objection to just exploring something along those lines and then taking staff suggestion on an implementation? It's not 100% what we wanted, but it's a step in the right direction. Objections? Okay.
I would note also that I live out on Steamboat, which used to be a lot of little cabins.
Mhm.
And what's happened is folks have actually taken those cabins and turned them into homes. And so Grandma and Grandpa's cabin is now where you live.
Yeah.
So there is a kind of natural process going on in that too. Of conversion from part-time residents to.
We're on page 4 of 6 of this.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm suggesting that we invest to Commissioner Casino's point, that we investigate both incentives and disincentives. Not just disincentives.
Sticks and carrots.
Yeah. The next was, we wanted to add a new item that said, reach out to, facilitate and partnered with qualified tenant organizations to expand renter protections, reduce evictions, and promote access to affordable and habitable housing. Staff said that makes more sense in the homeless housing plan. And my feedback is, again, there's no reason it can't be in both places.
And I would just add to that this is the equivalent of that, those education partnerships that we were talking about a lot with climate change. This is the housing version of that.
Any objections to including that language?
I just make a point that I got out of the rental business about 3 years ago because the Washington state laws on tenant
Rights.
laws is so ridiculously difficult in Washington state for the landowner. It totally favors the tenant, which I have no problem with, but it was so difficult to get people out of a house that I had.
Oh, evictions are quite difficult, yeah.
That I had to sell the house. Okay, because of the Washington state laws. The Washington state laws are already very tenant oriented, very much so.
And I would note that you probably didn't sell that house to some other landlord, but to somebody who moved into it.
Correct.
And it was no longer rental housing available in the market.
Yeah, and I sold it at a discount to a military family.
Yeah, so I think some of these things have a way of accomplishing the opposite of their goal.
Well, I mean, that's just.
I thought that was a success story.
A new homeowner at an affordable rate might not be great for the landowner, but it does increase home ownership and it gets people out of the rental cycle.
I know somebody that was in a similar situation to Barry, but instead it was a 24-unit apartment complex that had been in their family for 2 generations. And it became impossible for them, or basically not being a corporate master to manage 24 units. And so they did sell to a corporate master. So we gotta be careful what we ask for.
I mean, we're not litigating Washington State's tenant rights here. We're just saying that in terms of the rights that do exist, in terms of organizations, educational organizations about rights that exist, we make that information better. We encourage that information be better distributed, so it's not just someone who happens to have a buddy who knows property law, who gets access to that.
This isn't just education. This is us saying we want to expand renter protections, reduce evictions, and promote access to affordable and habitable housing. It doesn't sound like we have consensus on this, so.
I'm interested in what we do have, though.
Well, I know that, it's been said that some duplicity is fine. I'm not exactly sure if it is. I'd like to kind of have this all in one spot. Having it everywhere, like if somebody has to come to CPED because they want to look at the comp plan to find out what's going on, and they got to go over to public health because they got to kind of figure out what's going on with that plan over there. And those plans don't get updated at the same time or anything like that. Having all of these policies in one particular spot is probably better for everybody. And the duplicity doesn't really add anything. Just a thought.
I personally want everything in the comp plan that's about housing to include everything that's relevant.
It's worth noting also that this tied into the next one, which said that the way that the county can support includes offering spaces for meetings and trainings, education information about things like tenant rights, where to connect for affordability aid, CERT and other emergency preparedness, et cetera, and opportunities to connect with relevant agencies and orgs. So it's not just, there is a role for the county to play here where like if they, as a package, they it says that the county cares about affordability, that it's willing to help facilitate things that help affordability and tenant rights. And even the third one goes along with it, was just promote and support the creation of growth of resident nonprofit cooperatives, qualified tenant organizations, eligible organizations in acquiring and preserving housing units, including qualified sales, provide technical and financial support and incentives to ensure organizations are effective partners in creating and maintaining affordable housing. Organizations avoid burdensome tax obligations and regulatory fees when procuring or constructing low, very low, and extremely low income housing. And again, they said that it makes more sense in the homeless housing plan. I disagree. This staff's feedback wasn't that it wasn't a good idea. It wasn't that it's not feasible. It was just that they didn't think that this was the best place for it.
Maya, I see you have a hand up.
Yeah, I'm thinking of this while we're talking about this. I was gonna make a suggestion that maybe we could combine all three of those. Kind of the first one, reach out to facilitate and partner with qualified tenant organizations to expand protections, reduce evictions, and promote access. Make that the header, and then have the other two ones be kind of like specific items that can be done, and put this in the implementation plan as an action item, because this to me really sounds like an education and outreach component that public health and social services would pursue. I'm sure they would finesse the details of any sort of policy as part of their homeless and housing prevention plan update.
That's exactly my goal.
None of this commits the county. It really expresses the county's desire here and our priorities, and gives some examples of methods in which way we can help people, particularly the very low and extremely low income, the ones that just do not have available housing in the county. It's very targeted on them.
So
Is there support for Maya's suggestion? Okay, we have
enough.
we have majority, but not consensus on that one. And that gets us through 3 of them.
Definitely do still reach out to Tom and his team though, because
Absolutely.
actionable outcomes of this are contingent on this being in theirs as well.
I would love a joint meeting even sometime, where we could really say like, how
They
can
have
we
a
support each
stakeholder
other?
meeting that, well, Tom has come already. I'm happy to reach out. given our availability of upcoming meetings, and where they're at, I'm happy to reach out. We did this at the end of last year, tried to fill some of the end of the year
And
things.
their goal is to finalize their plan by December. So
Yes.
we could get a meeting in there.
Well, they're on the same timeline
Yeah.
we are, so, I mean, to the extent that we can let them know, that we've got some updated policies they might wanna consider, but they're trying to get to the board in the same way we're trying to get to the board.
Their stakeholder group is meeting twice a week at this point.
Well, it might be just a matter of sitting in one of those stakeholder meetings if we can. Get our stuff
I mean, I can ask, it's the staff that are working on it primarily and housing organizations and some folks from the cities.
I don't know if it just me, is it warm in here?
Seems
It's-
warm to me as well.
HVAC seems to be off. We're on the last page.
Conserving energy.
We had work with cities to prioritize the creation of units affordable to households with incomes less than 30% and 60% of the area median income through the construction / positive conversion, preservation, acquisition, and substantial rehabilitation in cities and within UGAs. The thought process here was, well, there's two sub-bullets here, I'm gonna read those two. Give eligible organizations the same SEPA review allowances we grant for UGAs countywide. And ask the county for language assistance for how to allow special needs housing on basically all UGA land with minimal taxes and fees. Staff's comments were that, again, that was most appropriate for the homelessness housing plan. And they said the CPED and cities planning departments don't develop. We could create a goal or policy about enhancing partnerships with public health and social services and the cities to work towards CPED's increased involvement in such things. And they said that legally we can't exceed the categorical exemption limits specified in state law. RCW limits categorical exemptions in unincorporated areas to 20 single-family units and 25 multifamily units. And then they said, CPED looks at land use and zoning, but taxes and fees are a larger jurisdiction discussion. If we adopt joint codes, by reference, we'll be adhering to cities' provisions for special needs housing. So largely, staff is recommending a punt here. Really, I think we were hoping here just that in joint, when we get to joint planning, that we have something in the comprehensive plan that gives us a direction to push for housing.
Yeah, which then comes to the implementation plan action item that is immediately below that, which that staff said they could include, which would be work with cities to prioritize the creation of units affordable to households with incomes less than 30% and 60% of area median income through new construction, positive conversion, preservation, acquisition, and substantial rehabilitation in cities and within UGAs. So that's actually, I think, almost literally what I had up there.
If staff feels that this can work as an implementation item, but the goals are just too messy, I'm fine to just accept staff's okay with the implementation plan. I just want something behind us when we get into joint planning to say, no, like, we really want to push you to build this housing that we cannot produce in rural county.
I am gonna jump in here. This is really more appropriate for our joint comprehensive plans, which once we get through the comp plan, our plan is to bring those back to you. The same way we have policies in our plan for Grand Mound and rural county, we will have policies in our joint plans for Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater. So I don't think this belongs in the comp plan that we're working on today, but I do think this should go in the housing sections of our joint plans.
And what I hear is that what I've heard is some desire to have kind of an umbrella policy for the county to
Going into that,
basically have the starting point of the negotiation for kind of a negotiation starting point.
a floor, if
Like
you will.
it is the official position of the county to be advocating for these things in those spaces.
Yeah.
Is that,
That's
what
exactly what we were after.
Anchoring.
So I think
Anchoring
it's
that
less
works too.
having it dictate the policy, but set the posture for negotiating the joint plans.
Yeah.
Yes, I think some of that is also embedded in the 5% rural growth too, like the approach to joint planning and trying to ensure that we're meeting our our regional housing needs within the UGA and looking at a lot of different tools in the toolbox to get there.
If BOCC nixes the 5% though,
Yeah.
and this is still in there, that still gives us leverage. I think it's an extra, rung. I think it gives us a slightly stronger posture going into joint planning, which my impression is the cities kind of walk all over us in that. And so anything
It's the way I wouldn't say it's the city's walkover, it is the framework that we.
in my inexperienced opinion, I am not trying to be impolitic. I have not gone through it myself, but I think it just gives us a slightly stronger posture in that, and it doesn't really bind us, the county, to anything other than prioritizing low-income housing, which I think is a good thing, and in the cities where it belongs.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that the cities actually do have housing action plans where the county doesn't. So they're actually quite a bit of us when it comes to thinking about affordable housing, and low-income housing.
You can sing from the same hymnal. I still think it's nice to have as an umbrella.
Oh, no, I'm
Yeah.
just.
It's a yes and.
Yes, and.
Yes, and it's providing more context.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bartlett?
Yeah, and just to be clear, a lot of this, and especially a lot of my discussion around like eligible organizations and things like that was going back to the testimony of the Habitat for Humanity folks that were coming in, and their palpable frustration with our push to lower development, negatively impacting their ability to build housing. So I was looking for ways that we could have exemptions that would facilitate them being able to do low-income housing work without creating a in for any developer that wants to shunt in for-profit housing instead.
I really appreciate this being raised. I think that we've seen while we still are lacking housing in the 100 to 80% range of AMI, and need more of that. There's almost every local jurisdictional program that does anything affordable related is in that range, 80% or less, and 80% of the AMI here is now something like $85,000 a year. It's a pretty huge number. There's a lot of people that don't make that kind of money. That's nowhere near minimum wage. And how can they possibly afford housing? And so I think the 80 to 60, the 60 to 30, the 30 to 0 gets very overlooked, and it's fairly, it's not built by developers usually. It's almost exclusively government subsidized housing. There's some rare exceptions to that, but even what do we call what we just saw the other day in the newspaper where Lacey sold a piece of property for $1, right? In order to encourage affordable housing development. There are ways to accomplish it without it being government subsidized housing, but it's still obviously partially government subsidized if you sell a piece of land that's worth hundreds of thousands or millions for $1. So there are ways to do it that are not necessarily the jurisdiction having to pay all the cost, but anything we can do to encourage housing at those levels is important as well, because we know there's a significant need. I think the numbers in our Department of Commerce and whatnot, the numbers tell us thousands of units are needed in those ranges. And we have very little in the pipeline.
If I may then, could we check, so not doing the more detailed stuff that the county needs, but just taking that implementation plan item that gives us that posture going into joint planning. Can we check that?
I think we have majority.
We have majority, but we have a few abstentions. Oh, never mind. We have majority and only one abstention then, so, okay. And then the last, we had two very tiny ones that were streamline permitting and inspection and building codes for manufactured housing, and work with other counties in the region to standardize the housing code for manufactured and industrial housing. Both answers were basically that it's state level stuff, and that they've already done some work on streamlining, and they're not suggesting that we implement other things. They were pretty vague to begin with, and I'm okay with letting them go. I don't know if you're in the same place with me on that.
Yeah, I mean, at most, I would say that if we have a specific policy about streamlining permit process to ensure affordable manufactured homes, and I think we're fine.
And it sounds like we do, so.
Yeah.
It was a lot. I'm sorry for how long that took, but
No,
Thank you for the work.
I'm not. We spent so much time on climate, which we needed to spend. We needed to spend an.
we did just spend a very small fraction of the climate time onto housing, so.
This is a very important issue, so.
Okay, Maya, back to
Okay.
you. Are we ready for the final recommendations?
I think so.
Okay.
Are there any final items that the planning commission wishes to address before we go through the recommendation slides?
Yes, Commissioner
I
Kaiser.
do have something I'd like to raise back about chapter 2, land use chapter. I've been in conversations with a few community members who had some concerns about some of the language there. Particular at the bottom of 2.6. There's language, and I know that's been through many iterations, but it talks about situations where UGA boundaries might need to be adjusted, and it lists reasons why. It talks about potential development pressure that exceeds available land, the need to protect critical areas, needs to address areas that may be difficult to provide sewer and water services to. And then the last bullet there is other reasons in RCW 36.770A, 1303C, which happens to be the RCW that deals with UGA land swaps. And it kind of, the point of view from the folks I was speaking to is it elevates land swap as like a tool that you would pull out of your tool belt if you needed it.
That's not really the consensus of the law.
Right, and so I'm just raising this for conversation. I had a nice chat with Maya and Derek about it, and they gave me some of the history. I just wanted to just sort of raise this to folks and see if we feel like we might want to change that a little bit. There was some alternative language proposed, which is a little less prescriptive or just definitive in the description. It says, as of the 2025 comprehensive plan update, the county determines that UGAs have enough land for expected growth. And here's the different language. The county will use the CP amendment process to adapt land use policies in response to future legislative requirements or significantly different population factors. So it doesn't elevate UGA swaps as one of those tools that you might reach for. And so I wanted to just see how folks felt about that. If anybody want to ask any questions?
I'd move to include it.
Second that.
I like that it removes us characterizing it. We're not here to interpret the law. We really aren't. So I would agree with the alternative language.
Maya, what do you think?
Sounds good. Could you repeat it after we have discussion?
Sure. More discussion?
I think an extra reason to exclude or not to highlight it is that there's two different UGA laws and they're as yet unknown. They, in some people's minds, they're in conflict with each other.
Right.
So rulemaking has come out on that point.
Adoption of the rules, so the WACs will be updated to reflect, it's all online, the rule language.
It's very recent.
Yeah.
It's what, CR 103 right now or
I
something?
guess what I'm saying is it's still a very unproven, untested idea.
Mm-hmm.
And the laws are confusing and maybe they're clarifying them, but we don't need to promote it until it's better understood and known.
I would make a suggestion that, so I think if we don't wanna highlight it, if we leave it out, it just basically reverts back to the state law and the countywide planning policies.
Yeah, because there are UGA changes. I mean, Grand Mound UGA was just expanded. And so, I mean, there are UGA changes that come through the planning commission that are not related to UGA swaps at all. Lacey is working on their annexation study, which may result in UGA changes. I don't think this group needs to characterize what they end up being, but it is something that state law allows. Retraction, expansion, now new swap thing. So I I would hate to see language that precludes the county from working with our jurisdictional partners to look at UGA changes. And so it's not just North County cities. Tenino also considered a UGA change to accommodate the new housing requirements. And so just I think just referring to state law is probably the best way to.
Yeah, and it,
I believe that the housing, the language, the alternative language that Commissioner Kaiser proposed is permissive and broad in that way. It's just not elevating.
It
Yeah.
specifies
Yeah.
population
And
in a way that would constrain more than the law does.
So how could we keep that suggestion?
I would honestly, if we don't want to expound on it and put a spotlight on it, my strong suggestion would be to remove it. Because it wasn't there before, it was a suggestion based on stakeholder comments, and we did not take those. We tried to like draw a broad picture of why you might do it, not responsive to one specific comment. But at the same time,
like, it doesn't need to be in,
so you're talking about eliminating that whole section of like, oh, I see.
just reverting back.
Yeah, I think.
Because I mean, you do have communities in Thurston County that challenge the population projections.
Mhm.
I heard
Not
so
us.
moved and I second it.
You want to vote on it? All those in favor of just removing the section?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. No answer. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
That was a good catch.
Okay, I think we're ready for our final motions, so I'll try and move through this pretty quickly. A summary of big policy decisions. Again, this is how the board is moving through the big ticket items during their review. The big questions for them are, should rural industrial uses be limited to those that support natural resources? What is the pathway for 5% rural growth? How to address Grand Mound housing deficits? Rural detached ADUs and conservation subdivisions. We've pretty much tackled all of these, but I'd like formal motions and votes on each from the Planning Commission. So the first is on rural industrial uses. Right now, the Planning Commission recommendation draft does limit rural industrial uses to those that support natural resource industries. So agriculture, mining, forestry, and aquaculture. So the motion, the recommended motion would be move to recommend that rural industrial uses be limited to support natural resource operations.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We've
That doesn't
waited on
happen
this so
every
many
day.
times at this
Opposed?
point.
Okay, that one passes by.
Great. And the second motion is the pathway and timeline for 5% rural growth. So we had this discussion at our last meeting on August 20th, and the Planning Commission discussed a shorter term, 2 to 6 year timeframe to begin implementation of measures and start pursuing implementation of those. And so the decision point for the Planning Commission, we talked about this a little bit last time, is incentive-based versus mandatory reductions. Commissioner Pestinger, you asked about this earlier this meeting. Mandatory reductions is like a broad downzoning with little consideration to where or why other than the property hasn't already been subdivided. Incentive-based and performance-based changes could be tied to water rights limitations, watershed plans, conservation incentives, protecting our ecosystems, and things of that nature. So those recommendations are on the table for the Planning Commission.
Commissioner Halverson.
I thought we had already made a decision on this, to go with a midterm versus a short term.
So if I could clarify, so we agreed last time on the 2 to 6, that was our compromise. And we're now being presented with adding additional language to it, which would specify whether we were pursuing it in an incentive-based and performance-based change method or a mandatory reduction to residential density. I would argue we don't need to specify that. I think if we don't include it, then it's all things are on the table.
I second that.
I feel like this is providing us a false choice.
Okay. Do you have a formal?
I would move to recommend that the county pursue changes to achieve 5% rural growth, beginning implementation of measures in the short term 2 to 6 year time frame.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I gotta go back to what we talked about
I think what you're getting hung up on is they call it short term now and.
We called it midterm.
We're calling it
midterm.
intermediate.
It's somewhere between midterm and short term. It's like the near midterm.
Yeah, we did. We talked about in the midterm, 3 to 6 years.
We ended up settling on 2 to 6,
Got the vote in.
Yeah.
but we have enough votes to.
So the one suggestion I would make, I know there's a motion on the floor here, but
Not anymore, it passed.
not specifying is going to actually make it really hard for the board to make a decision.
Cause you've spent so much more time with this than they have.
And they now have no guidance.
I'd stick with my nay on that specifically because I don't want sticks, I only want carrots.
I'm okay with them figuring it out.
We've already voted. I think it's fine as is.
Okay. Moving along, Maya.
Great. Number 3, we talked about this today. So this is addressing housing deficits within Grand Mound in residential or commercial areas. I think we had a unanimous for the residential areas, which again, that will also by default capture the commercial areas. So the motion for the Planning Commission is moved to recommend that housing densities be increased within residential areas of Grand Mound to meet housing deficits.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes, Maya.
Motion 4 is on detached accessory dwelling units. We discussed this at the August 20th meeting. I think this was also unanimous yay last time. But right now the current draft does allow for detached rural accessory dwelling units. There is a proximity limitation on how close it has to be to the primary residence. So that's already in the draft language.
From Bumberger.
I believe that our motion should include that limit. I don't want to be on record making a motion that suddenly removes that. So could you refresh us on what that distance is?
100 feet.
Was it 100
Yeah,
feet? So I move to recommend that detached rural accessory dwelling units be allowed within 100 feet of the primary structure.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes, Maya.
Thank you. So the 5th recommendation is on conservation subdivisions and whether or not they should be allowed, including with a density bonus provisions. Those density bonus provisions are for lessened size or additional resource use area conserved. And we had a unanimous yay on this time, so the motion is on the floor to recommend allowing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you. And this is the final recommendation. So for the Planning Commission's consideration, approve or reject the Thurston 2045 update as amended by the Planning Commission. You have 2 motions. One is to recommend approval and the other is to reject. And this would include all of your amendments between May and August of 2025 after our public hearing draft.
Mr. Pinsky.
I'm shocked that this is, at this point, feeling like ready for signing off on this is done. I don't feel it's done. I feel like we've got more work to at least look at where the draft stands now and see if we have any other concerns or changes. So I recommend us not even considering this tabling this for at least a meeting or 2.
Mr. Bumberger.
So I had the joy of facilitating several of the last meetings. And I have been reiterating, and I think staff would agree, our runway basically ends next week on this. So at most, we could move this vote, I think, to that first September meeting, but I don't think we can go multiple meetings before.
I'll accept 1 meeting rather than none.
It's a week.
I don't feel comfortable voting on this without Commissioner Nelson presence at least, like at least having everyone here to sign off on this. I mean, I feel comfortable with where we're at, but I second your concerns.
Well, I'm gonna move for a vote. I move to recommend approval of amendments to the comprehensive plan and associated development regulations as part of the periodic update, including changes directed by the planning commission over work sessions from May to August 2025.
Seconded.
You all want to do a voice vote on that?
Discussion.
Discussion.
I today contacted staff and asked for a printed physical copy of the draft as it currently stands. Was told unable to be produced by today, probably unable to be produced for weeks. And they're gonna do their best to get me something by the next meeting a week from today. So I don't remotely feel comfortable considering this without even solidly going through and knowing where we stand. I know we've gone through a lot of pieces and I should remember everything we've done in 40 meetings, 39 meetings, but I don't. And I really feel that's important. So I urge a nay vote on this motion.
Other discussion?
Is it possible to provide a friendly amendment to the current proposal that would give, I don't know, some sort of and ultimate okay once we have a printed copy in front of us? I mean, I do see Commissioner Pestinger's point that giving the final sign off on something that has not been written does feel a little like we're abdicating our responsibility there.
You vote against it and we try again next week.
I was exploring is there a possibility of a friendly amendment?
Just what we've heard is the biggest problems with getting a revised copy of this is all the changes that we've made in the plan to include the restructuring of the plan to put the climate change in the beginning chapters instead of chapter 11, which requires the entire plan to be restructured, which is causing staff an enormous amount of time and resources to make that happen, to get it to the commissioners in time for their vote before the year ends. That's the biggest problem that I saw and heard about the staff being able to give us a revised copy with all the changes. Am I wrong in that assumption?
That has been a contributing factor.
Right. So I don't see that we're going to get that even by next week. I would like to have seen it myself, frankly.
I know you love physical copies.
I do, and you know it. I mean, look at this. This is my copy right now. And I go back and check to see if the changes are gonna be done when I see the final copy. And I have confidence in the staff that they will be done. So I don't see a need to delay it any longer. I really don't. So I'd recommend my motion be voted.
I agree with Commissioner Bartlett. I think that maybe we should wait until Commissioner Nelson is here, just so there is everybody. So he also has a choice to vote on this.
Will we all be here next week?
I thought there was gonna be someone absent next week as well.
Commissioner Bartlett.
Well, we know your vote.
But
I
it
didn't
wouldn't
know.
count in the
That's
record.
true. That's true.
Commissioner Bartlett.
So, I guess I also just think that, you know, this is a surprisingly low turnout public comment meeting, for something of this magnitude. I think that if we center,
And also this has already had a public hearing,
Yeah.
so this is actually not the place for public comment to be. Public comment moves to the board after this.
This was the extra bonus from the meeting. Remember, nobody was figuring this was gonna
We
Yeah.
did get a lot
Yeah,
accomplished
that's
this
exactly what I
meeting.
mean. This is like, yeah, we, this was supposed to be the special session to get all of this other stuff out of the way so that we could
we
then,
could vote.
yeah, vote.
Then why, I'm sorry, why is it on the agenda as meeting number 40 for next week?
We placed that as backup because if it hadn't been on the agenda, we would not have been able to review that. You know, if we got pretty much all the wordsmithing stuff that we needed to get through tonight done, and I can try to commit to getting you guys a draft by next Wednesday. But you're not gonna have time to review it before the meeting, so I would plead for your trust a little bit that we're making the changes, and I'm happy to still provide you a draft, but it's gonna be a tight turnaround. It's a 400-page document, and yeah, I wish I could have provided it earlier, so.
And reserving time for the board to also sit with this,
Yeah.
because they haven't seen anything yet.
It's also Labor Day weekend and Maya's husband is in the army and so he'll have a Danza Friday, so the daycares will be closed. And so it being a 4-day weekend for our military families, I know that Maya will put the work in to do it, but I don't feel good forcing her to do that.
Commissioner Casino.
I don't feel like that there's anything between now and next week that would be substantially changed by any more digestion by this board or by this commission. And I think that if there's something that shows up in the plan that we were not expecting, go tell it to the board.
Well, excuse me, I'll be
Yeah.
the first to point it out.
That's exactly right.
Yes. Thanks, Commissioner Helverson.
Yeah.
Commissioner Pestinger.
So I feel like very different about that exact point, that I do think there's things that we can consider between now and then that could be significant. And number two, I look at it from a public perspective of communication with them about this decision making, and how would people, like, if I'm a member of the public looking at the planning commission website and our agendas, I would not think the final decision by this planning commission on a comprehensive plan update for the next 20 years is being made tonight. I would think there's still more work to be done and they're still working on it. And I feel like it's very disingenuous to the public to be misleading them about what's happening with our work, to all of a sudden spring a vote that's instantaneous like this. It feels that way to me, and I know I missed the last meeting, but that's how I
Just to
feel.
clarify for the record, we have been talking about this. We did talk about this timeline. This, it'd be difficult to characterize this as springing it, and it has been clear and in the record.
Commissioner
So-
Fishburne and Howard.
Having some respect for work-life balance of our staff, what could we see by Tuesday without any heroic efforts and without working the weekends?
I've already been working till 8 or 9 almost every night this week to try and get it done by next week for the board. So, yeah, I mean, we can really try to commit to get you a draft by next Tuesday or Wednesday morning. It's a lot that we're working on right now. So,
I'm trying to understand, I mean, Commissioner Pessinger has made a problem statement,
Mhm.
not seeing a document. So I'm trying to figure out how much of that document would be available for review.
We've got most of the changes outside of what we covered tonight in housing development regulations and utilities done already. So everything that we've covered in meetings up to this point is done. Right now, we're working on things like the reformatting, the numbering changing, any housing tweaks we will need to make is across several chapters and the appendice. And yeah, just vetting all of those changes that happened tonight, so.
Commissioner Helverson.
Yeah, to Commissioner Pessinger's point, I mean, the agenda, item 3 says the planning commission will continue review of public comments and make a recommendation. So it is on the agenda for us to make a recommendation tonight versus next week. I know next week we have another thing, and it is on the agenda for next week, just in case something happens, but the big item of agenda for next week is the Black Quarry. I just make that point.
No further discussion. I think,
No, I don't have
I
that.
think we have a motion on the table. Do we want to call the roll?
Yes, I can. Commissioner Casino,
Aye.
Commissioner Halverson.
Aye.
Commissioner Pestinger,
Nay.
Commissioner Miller. Chair Hansen.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bumbarger,
Aye.
Commissioner Bartlett,
Nay.
Commissioner Kaiser. Commissioner Fishburne.
Do you feel like we should have sparkling?
Yeah.
I know, something.
I
kept thinking there should be music, like lead up music.
We need that music that was
Zoom
playing at the
music.
end of the
Zoom
Zoom things for a while. I wanna stand up and accept my reward, you know?
I think we should all feel really good about this and understanding that now this goes into another process that we all have the ability to participate in.
And so we do have an option to put findings in the recommendation letter. I know there were 3 nays on this last motion, and I just want to check if there are specific findings that you'd like us to add into that recommendation letter.
Could we give them, till the next meeting for findings?
Do a minority report.
Yeah.
I would, yeah.
Yep.
Like to not try to draft that right now with my very adult brain.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hot in here. You're lucky. It is uncomfortable.
Maya, can we bring that question back next week?
Yes,
Sure,
we can.
You have the option to put the limit on when the minority report comes in.
Okay, well, I would like to give them an opportunity to think about that and revisit that idea next week.
Great.
And then we're being honest about the 2040 thing on the agenda next week.
So 2045, next week, in addition to that, we'll bring back the farmlands of statewide importance. I know we're already over time for tonight, so.
Commissioner Henderson?
Yeah, I just like to reiterate that as soon as you get a completed copy of this plan, I would like a hard copy of it, please.
In addition to Commissioner Havison, any other, and Pestinger, sorry, would any other hard copies that we want printed?
Yes, for
I'm
me.
pretty sure everyone does.
Okay.
I don't. I don't.
Except for Cassie.
Yeah.
Can I actually get a hard number? Cause I'll need to ask Tasha and admin support for this.
Okay, let's
5, 6? No? Okay, 5. I'll coordinate with, okay, 6, that, I was pointing. I'll coordinate with Helena and see what Tasha can.
Thank you.
Just the printing of that, we might even have to send it out at house.
It's a
It's
350
pages.
page
It took
document.
Tasha very long. Okay.
It is a ream of
It's a
paper.
ream.
One tree each.
So everybody put your money on the table, so pay for that.
I'm sure that comes out of an overhead budget
Yeah,
somewhere.
but we can.
That it's quickly stretched.
It's a new biennium. I don't know. You're like.
Oh, no, not ours.
Oh, yeah. you
Ours
guys use a
January.
different- Oh, you do calendar years.
Okay, I already put my agenda away because I felt like that was so final.
Thank you, Maya.
Thank you, Maya.
Thank you.
She'll be here in a few weeks to celebrate. Maybe that's when we get to celebrate.
Yeah.
Okay,
Get some bubbly apple cider or something.
well, speaking of which, next on our agenda is good of the order. Maybe we can suggest some of these things. For,
It's not a planning commission week, is it? No, I just, oh, maybe
anything,
do something special.
Special meeting.
Yeah, I prefer Johnny Pops to bubbly.
Okay, Johnny.
yeah, good.
Pretty good.
Anything for the good of the order?
We did it.
Yeah.
Maya, you did it. You
Good job,
did
Maya.
it.
Commissioner Bombarger, I just want to say you have been a powerhouse these last couple of meetings, and I really, really appreciate you. We would have not been able to get through as much as we did without you. So thank you for facilitating the conversation.
But I really was trying to get us through things.
Not at all.
And the board will appreciate it. We have 6 sessions with them, going through the different chapters. And the last session will be on September 17th. But you can tell they have been wanting to like get their hands on something more concrete. Because they really only have a few months to digest all of this. So, thank you.
Okay. Well, having no,
Our timing, when is the board asked to make their decision?
By the end of the year. Amidst budget and all these other things, which is why we overlapped and started their work sessions while you were still working through. And so we signaled all of these big policy decisions. And so they're aware of them and getting recommendations.
They're working on climate today.
December 16th.
They met on climate today.
Yeah.
Working with a lot.
Briefing, yeah, they're like 30-minute high level, this is what the climate element is, kind of briefing.
I got a couple of panicked messages about that. Oh, just like a few commissioners who were curious about where we were at. as planning commissioner, so thank you for putting all that together.
Yeah.
They made it a lot easier, especially the walkthroughs.
Thank you, staff, for all the ridiculous amount of heroics and good work you guys have done through all this. We could not do this on our own, obviously. We don't know what we're doing half the time. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I'm fully admit that, but I appreciate you guys so much.
Well, having no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Ended with the hammer. I like.
got all the